I want to ask you a question that I'm personally fascinated by, unrelated to everything we've discussed, and probably one you're not expecting. You played a key role 2 years ago during the Wagner mutiny. You were having discussions with Prigojine, with President Putin, ending the advancement towards Moscow. I remember covering the story very closely for 24 hours live. It's a very scary day for the world, in my opinion, but it's one not talked about. It's been 2 years. What can you tell us about that day? Again, that's a personal question that I'm really fascinated by. What can you tell us? What were those discussions like? Why did Prigojine stop his advancement? What was the agreement? Is there anything additional you can share from 2 years ago?
You know, this is a big question. In fact, my actions were appreciated by the West, surprisingly even by the CIA and MI16, along with other intelligence agencies. They appreciated it greatly. Why? It is not customary to talk about this publicly. However, the West took notice. I felt that too at the time. As the process unfolded, I sensed it as well. At that time, Evgueni Prigojine was rushing toward the nuclear button. And the West assumed that he could potentially overthrow the existing government at that time and seize nuclear weapons. This is what they privately thanked me for. I came to this realization in the middle of the day, not immediately. I never imagined that Evgueni Prigojine could descend into such madness. I had known him well for a long time, and we had maintained a good relationship. But to reach this point, it stems from his inexperience. He should have understood that it wasn't just about Russia. The Russians, as well as the Americans and the British, would destroy him. They would not allow him to gain access to nuclear weapons. This is a fact. But he didn't grasp that. He went straight to Moscow. We had a talk with Putin. When he left Rostov, we talked. I won't go into details there. That's a separate, extensive discussion. I realized that the situation was serious. Initially, I didn't disclose my actions to him right away. I asked him, "Let me think it over and I'll call you back." I needed to assess what we could do. Once I gathered all the necessary information, I concluded that I had to intervene. If Evgueni Prigojine would not agree with my perspective during the negotiations, and we were in contact, I would have been compelled to mobilize my most combat-ready units and send them to defend Moscow. I called Putin and confirmed that I would be prepared. Send planes. We would transfer our special forces and special operations forces to Moscow to protect the city. I realized in the middle of the day that this situation was very serious. And I called Prigojine again. Our conversation has recently been published, but it is twisted. Artificial intelligence does work after all. My opponents in the West published the conversation, twisted it, and added their own interpretations. But essentially, we had a conversation, and I managed to convince Prigojine that he would not achieve his goals. I told him, "Evgueni, we have solid relations, but you need to understand These are high-level interstate relations. Please don't take offense, but I am transferring my special forces units to defend Moscow. I communicated this to him. I asked him to think it over and provide me with a response. I will do everything possible to ensure that you are not subject to criminal prosecution. I will ask Putin to close the criminal case. At the time, Putin announced that a criminal case would be opened against the rebels. Well, there were other promises as well, and I will take you to Belarus and station you in Belarus. After some time, we had another phone call, he agreed, and they were already passing near Belarus, naturally, heading towards Moscow. And then they turned around and went to Belarus. I stationed more than 1,000 of them, maybe about 2,000 people. I stationed them in Belarus. Well, that's just basically it. And there were a lot of details there. This is how this conflict ended.
That day made me realize how fragile the world we live in is.